Nonetheless, welcome to Overtime with Coach Blue and Athletic Director Marissa.
Hello.
Man, here we are. It's been a busy summer, and it's all kind of wrapping up to become a very busy fall. We got lots of stuff on the horizon.
Yes.
This week, the annual Addict to Athlete 5K. We call it the Recovery Run. It's also known as the Proxy Run.
Yep.
Are you excited for this one?
I am. We have quite a few registered. We have a big group from our San Lucie, Arizona chapter registered to do it virtually.
Awesome.
I think they have about 60 people that are going to be joining virtually later in the month.
Coach Tara, well done down there in the southern Arizona region.
Yeah, we're excited to have them as part, but we have our packet pickup Friday night. Saturday is the annual National Overdose Awareness event. We'll be having some people running up to the state capitol for the event that starts at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Utah State Capitol. No matter where you're listening from, there are overdose awareness events everywhere across the country, across the nation.
It's a humbling evening.
Yeah. Google it. Find a place near you. There's a lot of light to remembers that go along with it, different things. So
absolutely.
We're going to be there. And then Monday morning, Labor Day, we'll be doing our 5K.
And then not but a week later, we'll be doing the second annual Addict to Athlete softball tournament.
Softball tournament. We have 20 teams ready to rock and roll. So
it's going to be insane.
Got a busy couple weeks.
Absolutely. So keep your eye on the calendar. Definitely stay connected to the socials. We'll be posting a lot of information on how to join Team Addict to Athlete, how to get active in your community. Yep. And shoot, as we grow with Team Addict to Athlete, I want to maybe just bring your attention to the website, addicttoathlete.org. Yep. If you'll go there and you check underneath like resources and whatnot, you'll find that there's the ability for you to become a certified trained coach for Team Addict to Athlete. Now, this isn't just a life coach, right? Nope. It's not about coaching people into recovery. This is about you becoming a certified Addict to Athlete coach.
So this is a peer
support.
A
team of Team Addict to Athlete.
A peer support recovery coach to help, people in your community. You could also just take the training just to help educate yourself. There are other areas of the country that we're getting interest and people willing and wanting to be part of this or bring Addict to Athlete to their community. So that's what you need to do. Jump on our website, you go to resources, personal training, and you can sign up.
Absolutely. And becoming a certified Addict to Athlete coach means that you get to operate and be trained to do what we do here at the home base in Utah and in several locations around the state and outside to help your community overcome addiction by promoting the movement is healing metaphor, the erase and replace status. And I'm a firm believer that when you open the avenues to multiple pathways to recovery, some amazing things happen. So check that out. The links are going to be attached to this description. And while you're there, jump on. And there's still time to register if you want to jump on to register for the 5K.
Yes. We still have a few shirts left. It will tell you on there if that's available, but you can also just register for $10. And you can also do it virtually, register, and we will get those bibs shipped out to you. So you can do it anytime in September, which is National Recovery Month, and be able to bring friends and family together and join us in running for a reason.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So check that out. As always, there will be a new Patreon episode dropping tonight or tomorrow morning. I want to let you guys know. Thank you all for doing that. It's the Patreon subscribers that help keep this podcast pushed out there into the ethos and into the ears of hopefully a lot of new listeners. Who can we thank for all the efforts that they're putting in for our podcast behalf?
So we want to thank our super fans, Karen Hardy, Jerem Thurston, Tara Butson, Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Sensei KP Brown, Patrick Forsyth, Christy Case, Faith Davis, and Andrew Baird. Thank you to our super fans, our rookie, Earl Dyer and Brad Waldron. Thank you to our rookies, our pro level, Justin Robbins, Gary Thurston, Flo Grant, and our champion level, Shad and Freya Robison. Thank you guys. Our Patreon, if you're interested in becoming a Patreon subscriber, there is many tiers. You can choose even from the lowest tier is for $2 a month and you get all the bonus content. So jump on to patreon.com/addicttoathlete and find a tier that works for you.
So the neat thing too about our championship level sponsors there with the Robinson family and the ability that we get to have by pushing the little ones in their adaptive chairs. We've been talking a little bit about beginning a fundraiser to earn money for another family that that's in need of a racing wheelchair. And so stay tuned for more information on how you can help us, make the dreams of another little one come true by getting this family into a chair that, actually helps more of the people that serve by pushing than it actually does a kid, I would believe. But, I'm excited to jump into that as well. Well, at least we got lots to discuss today. Specifically the topics, two very sensitive topics that all of us at one way, shape, or form will experience. And that's the Queen Mary Mother jewel of them all, which is stress.
Yeah.
And I just got another question about being able to deal with grief. This last week, we had a very significant individual in our running community pass away, and two of his friends. And it was a shock to the running community and to a lot of people that in one way, shape, or form, these three individuals had touched. And when we experience any kind of loss like that, significant loss, when we have a loved one, a friend, a mentor, an acquaintance even, lose their lives, whether it be natural causes, accident, overdose, you name it, in the wake is left a lot of broken hearts. Yeah. And, when you look at stress and grief, they are kind of two peas in one pod. They kind of go in hand. Yeah. And so, there's a lot to cover on these two topics, and not that we could do it even justice in the small amount of time that we have. But there's a lot of broken hearts out there. And, the sad part about it is, without the ability to identify, to help understand, to communicate and talk and to process, it can turn into some significant roadblocks in your emotional growth and even the healing process. Unresolved grief and undiagnosed stress in your life can definitely throw up walls that can make you prone to health issues, to a relapse, to other mental health issues.
It can cause issues in relationships and family. And sometimes it sneaks in and you don't even recognize or realize that's what it is. You're just upset about something.
Yeah.
And so, it takes time sometimes to weed through what is really going on.
Absolutely. And so, grief is kind of a natural response to loss. And all of us have felt that in one way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. It could be something as devastating as, like I said, as losing a loved one, something as just emotionally, like an emotional sucker punch, losing a pet. Like, there are so many different forms of this, but it's kind of when you feel this emotional suffering, when something you love has been taken away. And there's a lot, I think, that can fall into those kind of categories. And again, there's no right or wrong way to process your grief. Yeah. Being able to acknowledge that it's there is one of the first things. A lot of us try to be stoic about this kind of stuff and try to ignore some of those feelings by suppressing it. And if you don't acknowledge it and you suppress any kind of pain, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, it's going to come out in another area. Yeah. Grief can also trigger other unexpected emotions, right? You've heard about the grief cycle, right?
Yeah.
And there's 5 stages to the grief cycle. There's like denial, and then there's anger and bargaining, depression, and then finally acceptance. And you don't have to necessarily pass through each one of these stages.
You can go backwards, forward, around. It's not linear for sure.
Yeah. But it's important to understand that they're probably very present. In the denial phase, you might look at it as, this can't be happening. Like, there's no way this could be going on right now.
Yeah. And I think our minds have a way of trying to help us deal with it by making us think it's not real, and so you kind of block it out.
Absolutely. In the anger stage, we look at it as a question that really is hard to answer, which is, why is this happening, right? Yeah. Who's to blame for this happening? Yeah. And a lot of times anger is that primary emotion that comes out because of the significant amount of pain. We don't know how to deal with it. So anger typically leads to some kind of action. That's why we default to it so often, right?
Yeah.
But when you're looking for answers for situations that blame can't be placed upon, it really feels like this empty hole inside, right? I mean, there's so many situations where we want to hold someone or something accountable for that loss, but truly, what's it going to do if there's significant neglect or situational issues that someone's caused that loss? Well, then absolutely.
Yeah.
But more often than not, even if we get stuck in that anger cycle, it can only, do damage to you if you hold on to that aspect of the grief cycle.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean,
For sure.
walking around with that anger is not good for you.
Well, and again, it's the same situation. Sometimes you don't recognize that's what it is. You're just angry at other people. You're angry, it's just kind of boiling under the surface at situations and don't recognize that it's tied to maybe the grief connection.
The stage of grief, that's known as bargaining is kind of an interesting one. This is kind of some of that denial stage too, but bargaining kind of makes it sound like, God, make this not happen, right? That's a rough one because we can't say we'll trade you this for that, like take me instead, right? Like those kind of things. Like bargaining feels like one of those situational issues where you have zero control or ability to get yourself stable. And then of course depression, that's the I'm in deep sorrow, deep sadness.
Yeah.
And that's typically where we see a lot of folks come in for help, is when they start feeling like they can't somehow see past the tragedy. And then of course acceptance, right? And that's believe it or not, being able to find peace with what's happened. And that's not always easy.
Well, and again, it's like we said, sometimes you may get to that point and feel like you're understanding and at peace and then jump back to anger or depression. Something triggers it. And, that's frustrating to feel like, okay, I'm in a better place and I'm feeling okay, and then feel like you're going backwards, but that is normal.
Yeah. Well, and there are some physiological issues that accompany that deep feeling of grief. And, there's things like chronic fatigue. Like you just are always tired. You just feel like there's no energy. Your immunity, your immune system starts to deplete too, because as stress kicks in, the sucker punch to grief, your cortisol levels go up and you're more prone and susceptible to illness.
Yeah.
You can, really awake a lot of like pains and aches in your body, because that's where cortisol typically gets to start hanging out, and you start feeling like, down and out, which means movement is starting to become limited. Insomnia is very common with this.
You can feel tired and like you have no energy, but you can't sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think sometimes it's depression comes along and it makes it feel like you're walking through like quicksand or tar. Like everything just seems to take so much energy and be so hard to do, so draining. It's exhausting.
So within the grief, I guess, emotion, there's also some situational issues that I was kind of unaware of until, working with folks on overcoming, pushing through, coming to understand, loss. And one thing that kind of took me off guard was this theory and this concept of like anticipated grief, right? And anticipated grief is something that a lot of parents feel if their family members are struggling with addiction, or if there's a terminal illness in a family. And that's kind of like what the name suggests, right? It's kind of like forecasting a loss that hasn't happened yet. And so you're doing it now instead of when it happens and afterwards. And so
anxiety driven, right?
Anxiety
like looking
driven.
to the future. Yeah,
absolutely. But there's also like some of that stuff that goes through, like loss of job, or like, like if you start seeing people getting their pink slips and you're like, oh crud, here comes mine. Right.
Yeah.
Retirement happens a lot, like this anticipated grief where it's like, who am I without this?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about anticipated grief is that it takes away from you being in the moment so much that you miss the opportunities to be connected and to be grounded and to have the time that's left.
Like being in the here and now. For sure.
Yeah. There's disenfranchised grief, which kind of occurs when the loss happens so fast that you can't mourn. This happened a lot during COVID when people were passing away, and They had these funerals that were so fast, and your loved one goes into the hospital and doesn't come out.
A lot of people couldn't, attend funerals. So
absolutely. And so if it happens so fast and you're not able to go through, like I'd say the stock standard issue like experiences, then it's kind of disenfranchised. It's like what just happened?
Yeah.
And there's this sense of like not knowing and trying to fill in the gaps. And anytime you try to fill in the gaps and guess what you should have, could have, might have, would have done, you're going to do it wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a sad thing too when that happens. Now, the thing that I see a lot is the complicated grief. And this is like the pain at a significant level that kind of feels like it's never going to disappear. Yeah. It usually arises when we lose or someone passes away that we're very close to. And this is where, the loss that's kind of stuck in the state of bereavement. You're always mourning, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I noticed this when I was watching a documentary on stress, and I'll have to find it. You can find it on YouTube, but it was showing that there are only a few mammals in the wild that will mourn the loss of a loved one. Humans, obviously, being one. Elephants being that. There were other kind of marsupials and whatnot that would kind of do this. They'd have a period of mourning. Yeah. But the thing that this guy was doing was studying the level of stress and the stress hormones of cortisol in primates, and he was looking specifically at a group of monkeys. And, as he was trying to measure the cortisol level inside of these animals, he would tranquilize them. And so that you can just picture that all these monkeys would be sitting around just eating leaves, hanging out, doing monkey things. And all of a sudden this dart comes whizzing by him and strikes Ted. And Ted passes out and falls down, and they think, oh my gosh, Ted's gone. Like, he's dead. And then the guy would come over and simply put a tarp over Ted. And the monkey would go back to normal. They'd be like, oh, out of sight, out of mind.
They're gone.
They're gone. And I thought, that is really weird.
Yeah.
That when they could see him, it was very like, oh my gosh. But then once it was removed, it was like, huh. And then all of a sudden Ted came back and they're like, wait a minute, like, well, what the heck was that? So complicated grief, that's a rough one. That's typically where you might need to get in to see some counseling and some therapy, because it feels as though that loss is so significant that you yourself are also lost. Yeah. I've seen EMDR therapy work phenomenal with this. A lot of people are nervous about utilizing EMDR for grief because they're under the premise that if EMDR is to work, that it takes away the memories and all that, and it doesn't. Memories always remain.
Well, and I think some people have this understanding that, if I'm not in pain, if I'm not sad and grieving that loss and mourning that loss, that I'm not honoring the person who's gone, or I'm forgetting them, even if you're not. But part of honoring and loving them, I think, is being able, as hard as it is, like it makes sense but doesn't make sense, is being able to remember the good times with them and remember the memories and not just the sadness of the loss and them being them being gone.
Absolutely. And that was one of the things too that I was nervous about utilizing our team philosophy of erase and replace when we're talking about these things, because the thing is, we're not supposed to erase memories and replace them with new ones of your loved one, but it's basically those feelings of that complicated grief that we want to have you let go of. That's why there's been certain situations on the team where we've had significant loss, and instead of sitting idle, we do what, the other tagline of Addict Athlete, we turn the mess into the message. Yeah. That's why the proxy run that's why our recovery run kind of morphed into the proxy runs. We felt a significant need to remember the individuals that have lost their battle.
Well, I'm trying to create a experience to help families and people heal.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, for those of you guys that have been around with us for a while, you've heard the story of our very first 5K that, 12, 13 years ago now. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
And of the gentleman that, was kind of, moseying around our starting line. And before we started, came over and got his race bib and packet because he was going to run proxy for his daughter before we even realized that would be part of the experience. And his biggest concern 12, 13 years ago was that the stigma surrounding her passing would, I guess, tarnish him as a father. And that has always weighed heavy on me. And then, of course, having lost athletes to addiction and other situations, it's been one of those things where we felt that wasn't the end of their story. And we carry on that. And there's been a significant increase in overdose deaths over the past few years, which means there's no shortage of families that are grief-stricken and need to have a healing hand extend, right?
Yeah, it's hard.
I think that's what the proxy run's all about. And so the best thing you can do for grief and the grief cycle, again, is understand that it doesn't have to be forever, but how deep it hurts kind of reflects how deep you love.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that, right? Like it only hurts because you love.
Yeah. If you didn't love them, it wouldn't. You just move on.
You just move on.
Pretend that tarp's over them and it's no big deal, whatever, you know?
I remember that when I was conducting a funeral services for a young man who passed away. He had difficulties with cancer. And the location that they chose was a stake center, a building, which is, part of a church. And it had massive amounts of room in there and it was filled to the wall.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of sorrow in there as there should be. But the overwhelming feeling I got was, look how much these people loved him.
Yeah.
And still love him. And it only hurts because you love. And so I think that that's also a testament to you out there who might be experiencing this, is it only hurts because you love.
Yeah.
And to sacrifice that love and say, oh, I'd rather not have this.
Yeah. Would you rather have not had the memories, the love, the relationship than feel the pain? I mean, sadly, that's part of it. To have relationships, to have those highs, we have the lows when things are sad. And I know in my cases, I wouldn't have rather not had the relationship.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this when we've had loss in our homes, even right down to some of our animals. I mean, some of that is very hard because, they become family members and you think, well, man, I'm never going to set myself up for that loss again. So we're never going to have animals, or I'm never going to get into a relationship. I'm certainly never going to have kids or get married.
Try to hold yourself back.
Yeah. It's like, ooh, that's part of the human experience.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that I would say if you've experienced loss or in that grief cycle is turn to your friends and your family members and the people that are close to you. Build your team, your support network. A lot of times I've noticed that, I've heard of people saying, I feel awkward after the funeral, after the family meals have stopped, because now I'm just the parent of a child that, has passed or what have you. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, how important it is that we ask questions about their loved one, that we talk to them about them, that we don't forget them. There's been certain times, even on Team Addict to Athlete, where we've remembered fallen athletes, and there's been some on the outside that are like, "Why do you keep, mourning this person?" I'm like, "We're not mourning this person. We're celebrating their life now." Like, so there never should be a time where you feel as though you have to be on a timeline to let that stuff go, right?
Yeah. And you don't want, and it's easier said than done, but to feel like you are a drag and you don't want to be around other people because you're the one that's just sad and, but like that's part of the process, and being able to honor them and do things in their memory and to keep their memory alive that's part of the healing.
Absolutely. One thing I know that works very well, that sometimes has a little bit of sting in it for some people, is turning towards your faith. Whether it be, a religious organization, whether it be a spiritual connection, lean into the greater purpose of the plan that's, that's bigger than us, whether it's the 12 steps talking about a higher power, whether it's, like I said, a religious like mindset, lean into that. I was watching this movie a couple of days ago. I think it was when we got back from Cedar City. And it was about near-death experiences. And it was kind of a cool thing because the people they were interviewing weren't, necessarily, I guess, programmed into one specific religion. It was kind of this spiritual thing.
Yeah.
And the way they described their experiences was mind-blowing. And each one of them kind of had the same theme, which was there's something bigger than me out there. Didn't matter if it was a Buddhist God or a Christian God or an Islamic God. It didn't matter if it was, that Mother Nature. It didn't matter. It was like there's something bigger out there. And I think when we can kind of humble ourselves a little bit and say that, there's nothing really that we can control,
And to know that we don't know all the answers.
We don't know all the answers.
Like, it's not that somebody's gone because we did something bad or that, we have a evil God, good things happen to bad people. But there's a lot of things outside of our control. And, how can we learn to live with it?
Leaning into faith helps tremendously. Facing your feelings, really being able to talk about like, I'm not doing good today or I'm doing better today and not feeling guilty if you are feeling better, It's a big one.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those kind of things that I think work. And I would say the biggest part of all this is get moving. Movement equals healing. Yeah. If we stay put in the dark, dreary corners of our homes or even our hearts or minds, we're not going to heal. I've seen several of our athletes turn that mess into a very powerful message of remembrance and of celebration. And those are they who really embrace, I think the beauty in the human experience. So as we look at that too, we look at the concepts of stress because there is a residual now as we talk about these kind of things that brings into the mind's eye that none of us make it out of this life alive. I remember talking to David Clark, a dear friend of ours, who had a very positive outlook on life, on life after. Yeah. And, his nickname was Superman. And when he passed away after surgery, that blew us all away because it kind of put into our minds that we're all kind of susceptible to that.
Yeah. I mean, he had, conquered alcoholism and obesity and was... wasn't it just a few months before he had ridden his bike? Yeah. Like across
the eastern U.S.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Many, many states. And it was just like, no, he can do anything and he's healthy and strong, but that doesn't answer everything.
No, but I remember talking to him about these kind of things and his outlook and things that would normally cause stress that could get the dominoes falling into a situation of negativity. He never allowed get pushed over in the first place. And it was kind of one of these things where I remember talking to him about like, I know that you deal with stress and all this stuff like all of us do. Like, what is your secret? And it was really kind of impressive the way that he looked at this. He kind of looked at like, well, we're always going to be in a situation where we get to choose how we respond to the what is. It's the resistance to the what is that causes our suffering. And suffering typically means that there's going to be stress involved. Mm-hmm. Stress and grief and everything else contributes to triggers that domino yourself into relapse and into some pretty scary places. Yeah. And so in a world by which we are governed by stress and stress management, how in the world do you begin to start minimizing its effect on you, right? Because there's positive stress and negative stress, and your body can't tell the difference. I mean, stress is a natural reaction to your body and during changes of hardship or excitement. And they can result in behavioral responses, physical responses, all kinds of stuff. Right?
Well, and I think it's like, David says, it's so much in the mindset and how we approach it and how we look at the situation. And like that can totally relieve so much of the stress. Does it relieve all of it? No, it's going to still be there and there's stuff that still comes. But to have a good and positive mindset about it and to know that it's coming no matter what. And this is here. So now let's just face it. Exactly. Helps so much.
So stress kind of being that natural reaction to something that happens kind of exists so that it can prepare you for what's coming. And you've heard of the fight or flight, responses when it comes to stress. I mean, those are kind of the impulsive, scary, kind of intense things that happen out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But there's also like different forms of stress, right? Acute stress is kind of a normal thing that kind of goes, and it can be positive or negative. It could be excitement for going on a vacation and the stress about getting everything that you need packed. But it could also be just, kind of like this feeling of having a roller coaster, like emotional experience where you're feeling good one day, but then you're driving to work and you get caught in traffic and you're upset. And so stress kicks in because you got to be at work at 9 and it's 8:55 and, and that's acute. Then you have these episodic issues, right? That like cause stress where it's, if you're a kid in school, you've got tests coming up, or you've got, audits or something at work, or you've got, things that are a little bit more heavy that you're
just
not
keep
looking
coming
forward to.
Before.
And then there's chronic stress, which is long-term and goes on for months and years. And that's the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
It can just have more detrimental effects. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that if we take a stress test of the country right now, you'll see that like we allow ourselves to be manipulated into feeling as though there's urgency around every corner, which of course is going to induce stress, right? If we feel like the world in and of itself will implode come November with whatever candidate you want not winning, you're wrong. The sun's still going to rise and the sun's still going to set. Doesn't matter who is behind that desk.
Yeah.
But when we allow things like that to dictate our existence, stress becomes chronic because there's always this fear and this worry.
Yeah.
And the longer it goes on, the harder it is to manage because everything can set it off. So the autonomic system inside the body starts to like kick into overdrive, and the stress hormone that's attached to this is called cortisol.
Yeah.
And cortisol is kind of a bugger, Marissa. You know what that is, right?
Yes.
So cortisol starts to create physical symptoms, and there can be physical symptoms associated with stress.
For sure.
You can get aches and pains, like the grief cycle we talked about. You can get chest pains, which is kind of a interesting concept in and of itself. Whenever I hear of someone that's had heart problems, that's had like heart attacks or things of those natures, I kind of like to dig in a little bit and kind of figure out what kind of person they were. And they're typically the people that have what I would call a chronic stress, like inducing lifestyle.
Yeah.
Whether it's overdoing it because they love their family so much and so they're, burning the candle at both ends.
Trying to do everything for everyone.
Yeah. Or they've been hurt some way, and so they block off relationships and hide from that. I mean, all of those things revolve around relationships and love, and you get kind of that concept of like, where's that cortisol going to hit then?
Yeah.
At the weakest part of your body, which for them is going to be their heart. They're going to feel it in their heart. That's why when you have a significant loss, you feel heartbreak.
Yeah.
That's why they call it heartbreak.
Yeah, you really can
They
feel
don't call it pancreas bend or like
spleen, something.
Spleen splinters. Right. It's heartache. And that's why. It's because it is so significant to that area in your body.
Yeah.
When we talk about it only hurts because you love, that relates directly to your heart. And so you start getting things like high blood pressure. You start getting,
anxiety,
like headaches and dizzy.
Fatigue. Poor sleep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So chronic stress. Well, here's the deal. It's like, well, what can you do with it then? I had this, when I had my Garmin, I had to, upgrade to the old Apple Watch. I'm glad my watch doesn't do this now, because a year or two ago when I was having some significant health problems, a lot of it was stress related. It was just a lot coming at once where I thought I could manage this kind of stuff, gained weight, heart, what is that? Blood pressure.
Blood pressure
issues. And I'm like, what is going on here? Now, it would be simple for us to say, dude, just chill out, man. Just relax.
Calm down.
Calm down. You can't do that though.
Yeah.
And so literally I had this watch that would say I had a body battery, and it would always be like peeking in the red. It's like, you're stressed or you're this. And I'm like, how the flip does a watch know that, right? And I'm sure there's technology that made it happen. But like I was starting to be like, wait a minute, this is going on for months and months. Something's very wrong here. And I'll tell you, the biggest thing that got me to a spot where I knew for a fact that I was dumping the cortisol, that I was beginning to balance stress and maintain that, was exercise, was movement. It was putting my needs first, which causes stress in and of itself, right? If you allow it to.
Yeah.
But
it's like you have to charge your own battery to be able to keep going. And that is a quick and easy way to do that and be able to, let go of some of that cortisol so that you can do the next thing.
Absolutely. And so how does that happen when you have all these worries and these concerns about making your bills, about the finances of your family, job security, all these kind of things that play into stress management.
Yeah.
Like, because you can't just be like, well, all right, F it all, I'm moving to the wilderness, right?
Yeah.
Because how are you going to get there? You need money, right? I mean, all this stuff. And so as you look at this, it's like small changes can lead to big consequences down the line. And I mean positive consequences. Me simply putting me first and doing exercise and seeing the doctor got me into a position where I could lose the weight. I could manage the blood pressure. I could start moving more, which
some of it's just recognizing this is an issue.
Yeah.
And it's, you've got to do something.
And, that's when we really started pushing the movement as healing, because it truly is.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't allow ourselves to put ourselves higher on the priority list, then don't be surprised when you start having the heart attacks, you start having the limited mobility, you start feeling as though you need to use again.
Yeah.
The behavioral parts of stress,
Sleep.
those are the addictions, right?
Sure.
That's how stress manifests in behavioral mindsets, is you relapse.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a hard thing. You can get physiological responses to stress that come out as chickenpox, right? And shingles, right? That's a big part of that. One of the things that I had to do is get a vaccination for that, because I kept getting those. And I'm like, well, what is it? And I remember the very first time I would talk to a doctor about I had this big rash on me, and I'm like, this is nuts. And finally went to the doctor, and he's like, you have shingles, and it's a stress response from the...
I'd never heard of it.
I'm like, what? And he's like, what's going on in life? I'm like, nothing I can't handle. I'm like, I'm in school. I have a job. I just got called to a bishopric. I started a program to help people in recovery. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I guess I do have...
We just had a new kid. Yeah.
I'm like, I guess I do have a few things on there. So even though we think we can manage it, when you start really dissecting some of this stuff, you start realizing that, oh, man. So we needed to start looking at simple pleasures in life to reduce stress, which means that maybe it's not a great idea to have every toy known to man in the garage. Maybe it's not a good idea to have car payments and house payments that you can't afford. Maybe it's not a good idea to live outside of your means, where you feel like all you're doing is working to pay for stuff that you're never going to enjoy because you're always away. And to simplify, and there's still some lessons in there that we need to take, but on a grand scale of things, being able to reduce meant more happiness, more time, more experience.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing. Stress can be caused from anything and everything, right? And when we're talking about grief, I mean, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But long-term stress, even growing up, I didn't realize this, the significant stress I was put through as a kid made that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Causes issues when you've got time and time again and complex trauma. Yeah. Big issues.
Absolutely. So, you can do this again by recognizing your needs first, which seems very foreign. Getting yourself into a situation where you're moving more. Being able to, watch diet, things you don't want to do is to high sugar, high carb, high caffeine. You want to avoid some of those kind of things.
Fruits and vegetables, fiber.
Absolutely.
Protein.
Meditation, like outdoorsy stuff. Kick your shoes off, go for a little stroll around your backyard.
Grounding. Yeah.
Grounded. And, if needs be, jump on and see a professional, kind of help navigate through those kind of things. So it can last as long as you want it to, for a certain degree. I mean, you get to be the captain of your own ship.
You can't always, and you will not be able to control, stop, eliminate all stressors in life. So what can you do to...
So
be
you're
proactive.
navigating through life, whether it's a sense of loss that creates grief or life in and of itself that creates stress, know that there are pathways to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do get through them on the other side, things get very, very beautiful.
Absolutely.
So, two great kind of requests to talk about. Again, we want to our hearts and minds and just team support go out to those three that lost their lives. Dave Bell, who was very prominent in the running community, and two of his colleagues and friends. Our hearts are with you guys. And for all of you out there, a great way to pay tribute is to get out there and move and remember, whether it's, coming out and hanging out with us on Monday, Labor Day, or if it's, you just carrying that message in your heart around your own block. Get out there and move and, turn that mess into a powerful message.
Yeah.
As always, this will be a podcast that will be released this weekend. So if you didn't get to hear it all, hope you guys catch it there. Submit your questions. We love doing them through socials, through direct messaging. You can even write us a letter and send it to us here at Addict if you really want to, but keep an eye on the website, and can't wait to share these experiences with all of you. Keep an eye on the socials. We'll do some live experiences so you guys can see Team Addict Athlete in action. And until next time, do your best to turn your mess into your message.